Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, you won't pay $100 for a new hard drive? Okay, enjoy paying $22,000 for my time to deal with the problem. Corrupt manager wants me to reject crucial supplies I do as instructed. Umbridge wanted a fence, she got a fence. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. You won't pay $100 for a new hard drive? Okay, enjoy paying $22,000 for my time to deal with the problem. I had a job where I had a computer which was, incidentally, also the web server for a very important internal web application. I thought this was really stupid that it wasn't in a server room being managed by IT, but for some weird reason they wouldn't do it. I didn't use this application or have anything to do with it, but it took up a large chunk of the hard drive and made it slow. I didn't even know what it was on the hard drive, so there was a bunch of old development software I could never remove for fear of harming the application. I was also not permitted to turn the machine off or even sign out nights or weekends, so it would be running whenever anyone needed the application. I had to just lock the screen and leave it. This application was apparently something developed by my department before I joined the company, and everyone involved with it was no longer there, and nobody really knew anything about how it worked other than that this machine had to be running and signed in, and it wasn't developed in our normal system and wasn't in our code repository. By the end of my time with the company, they'd had such turnover that I was literally the only person in the department who knew it was even there. I was a web developer, and I required a vast amount of disk space for my work, for reasons mostly relating to how moronic management was about process. I had to keep 3 complete copies of everything the company ever developed. I often ran out of disk space. I had to use increasingly desperate measures to deal with this, up to and including deleting anything that Microsoft included with Windows that I didn't actually need, like the camera app on a PC with no camera. It quickly got to the point that I had to call IT to tell them my PC was becoming unusable due to disk space, and could they please do something about it, and suggested that because of this application they might want to take this PC into management and give me a different one. I thought they would do something like replace the computer, identical would be fine as long as it didn't have this application on it, or give it a larger internal disk, or maybe even just attach an external disk. I would still have a slow machine, but I'd have had the space to do my work. But they told me that I'd have to remove what I could and defrag the disk to make more space, and I would just have to suffer, and please don't call them about this again. I talked to my boss and was told that IT's word was final, and I would just have to deal with it. So it'd get bad, I'd remove what I could and start a defragment, and the machine would become too slow for me to use for about 24 hours, during which time I could do no work. This happened about once a week, so it took about 1/5 of my time. Not counting time spent looking for stuff to delete. I kept telling Manglement this was happening, and they kept telling me to shut up and deal with it, but at least when they wanted me to do stuff, and it was I can't, my computer is busy clearing disk space, and is presently unusable, they moaned but understood and left me alone. So, because IT was too lazy to do anything and Manglement was too lazy to go to bat for me and the company was unwilling to spend $100 on an external hard drive, they got to spend over $22,000 a year on salary for me to sit around and wait for the machine to make some space, so I could do my work. That wasn't my salary. That was the portion of my salary that they were wasting on this problem. Not counting the value of the time of everyone else that had to do my work while I couldn't. Oh, and it was getting to the point that I wouldn't be able to deal with it at all. There wasn't anything left to delete and defragging wasn't reclaiming any more space, and the company's internal software took up more and more space every day, and I estimated I had about a week left before it became fully unusable, when I had a heart attack and a stroke and never went back. I occasionally think, with, admittedly, some glee, of the panic it must have caused when they no doubt turned off the computer and sent it to IT to be wiped, and a few hours later panicked users started calling demanding to know where their precious application that they couldn't live without was, only for my evil Manglement to say, honestly, what application? Corrupt manager wants me to reject crucial supplies I do as instructed. About a couple of decades ago, I used to work at a concrete production plant for a reputable construction company. Our company, like several other construction companies, were awarded a portion of a larger project. A large portion of land was earmarked for setting up temporary office buildings and concrete plants for the different construction companies. The sites were separated by temporary barriers and had separate entrances. As many of you may or not know, concrete is produced by mixing cement, water, sand and stone grits, size 20 mm plus 10 mm, along with special admixtures in a specific ratio. Our recipe also contained a special ingredient, stone dust. Turns out, only our company used stone dust in our concrete and the neighbors did not. So a special truckload full of stone dust was specially shipped for us. This is important later. My job entailed orchestrating concrete delivery to our project sites apart from regular quality control tasks like checking incoming materials for quality, etc. Only after I had signed the delivery receipts, our store's personnel would unload the trucks at designated areas. A log of all trucks entering and leaving the concrete batching plant would be kept by security at gate, relevant later. Since my job entailed checking incoming material before accepting, the suppliers would usually try to offer some petty bribes, from cash to booze to flesh, if you know what I mean. I always declined such offers, as once accepted, you became their dog and lose all respect in their eyes. Moreover, bad material also impacted the quality of concrete produced, strength, consistency, and setting time, to name a few. Since concrete delivery was also part of my job, it was in my best interest to only accept good material, otherwise the client would chew me up during casting. One night, a supplier truck entered the premises with 20 mm stone chips. Upon testing, I found them to be undersized for 20 mm and oversized for 10 mm. I went ahead and rejected the load. The driver and supplier started pestering me, offering bribes and whatnot. When I didn't budge, they called my boss, who asked me what was going on. I explained that the quality of material was unacceptable, and I have rejected this. When I mentioned it is too small for 20 mm, he ordered me to dump it in 10 mm bin anyway. I knew what that meant. My boss was on the supplier's payroll. A couple of weeks passed by and my boss asked me to reject a truckload of material from a very reliable supplier. He knew that the supplier was only delivering stone dust that day, and should we reject material, the entire load would be a waste and a loss to the supplier. Once the stone chips or stone dust has left the quarry, they, for some reason, can't bring it back. Hence my boss wanted to hit the supplier where it hurt most. Especially stone dust, as there was no other company that would take it. Cue malicious compliance. I called the supplier, who had become a friend by now, and told him that I was under orders to reject a truck. He panicked and told me that my boss was putting pressure on him for bribes. This particular supplier believed in providing quality material and always visited my lab to understand how I tested the material and what my requirements were. He would then go back to his quarry and adjust the equipment to deliver the best quality materials. Because he put so much effort in improving the quality of his product, he did not budge and bow down to my boss's demands. I asked the supplier friend to route a truckload of 20 mm stone chips meant of some other company to my plant first. I would let the gate security log the truck's entry, and then promptly reject the material. He was then supposed to send the stone dust, which I would accept and be done with my task. Everything happened as planned. I completed my remaining activities for the night and went home. When I came back to work in the evening, my boss was waiting for me at the door. As expected, he had checked the entry/exit log as well as material receipt history. He had noticed that I had accepted the stone dust and was chewing his anger, waiting for me to explain. He very casually asked me if I had rejected a truckload. I acted dumb and answered in affirmation. I told him that the very first truck, a 20 mm, was rejected. Now usually 20 mm is never rejected, especially from the supplier, so he asked me what reason did I give while rejecting the truckload. I said flakiness index, a test we never do as a field test, but is mandated by the client to be done once a quarter. He knew that I was playing him, but he couldn't do anything. I had done exactly what he had asked me to do, reject a truckload. I had covered my bases with the security log as well as material receipt, so he just muttered something under his breath and never mentioned this to me again or asked me to do anything similar. 2 months later he was transferred to a different site and I became the overall in charge, same designation and pay, just more responsibilities. Umbridge wanted a fence, she got a fence. I worked at and volunteered for PTA in my daughter's elementary school for 7 years. During that time we got a new principal, let's call her Umbridge, as she was the master of hiding evil beneath a sugary sweet facade. Umbridge came in guns blazing as it was her first principal assignment. I am a take no BS kind of person, which irritated Umbridge to no end. Anyway, she got it into her head that our school needed a safety fence around it, see end of story to understand the quotation marks. It was going to cost loads of money the district didn't have/wouldn't allocate. So Umbridge tasked me and our PTA with finding a way to fundraiser and pay for her fence, says she will find funds for the labor costs. Nobody wanted it, it wasn't needed, but okay. After nearly a year of researching viable alternatives, she vetoed every one. One day, miraculously, I find that one of our students' parents owns a fencing company, and I call and fairly beg for any help or donation they can give. They say they'll donate the entire fence. Only charge nominally for the labor. Umbridge is elated, but now that the fence is free she wants the PTA to pay for the labor. I tell her she has very specifically drafted emails and speeches for the past year that she demanded be written into our meeting minutes that the PTA must find a way to pay for the fence, not the labor. She is livid. Her fence was then installed. My favorite part isn't even the funding. She insists that the multiple gates, which the fence company actually would like to be paid for, aren't necessary. She installs one at the very entrance to the giant playground and grounds surrounded by this fence. And she is super crazy strict not to be broken rules that nobody will climb on or over this fence. As I worked playground duty often, I found immense pleasure in reporting to the principal every day that all the school's basketballs, foursquare balls, volleyballs, or whatever have bounced over the fence, and as neither staff nor children are allowed outside the fence, on the fence, or over the fence, we would just be leaving them for her to deal with. I mean, she always made our very sweet custodians pick them up at the end of the day, but I made it my special job to report to her every incidence of anything going over the fence since she is so very concerned about the fence situation. Like 5 to 6 times a day, via walkie-talkie and email for documentation purposes. For those of you concerned about my lack of sense of security, we had plenty of other barriers, had many other options available that the district would have paid for, and she even left the back of the fence next to the creek wide open and said, "The fence is just meant to be a visual barrier." Actually, the demise of Umbridge is pretty great, but maybe that's another post. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.